94.3 The Dude is very grateful to our men and women in uniform. We're proud to recognize local members of our military by turning the spotlight on them right now in our Soldier Salute.
Welcome to the Soldier Salute. I'm your host, Ethan James, and today we're going to be talking to South Carolina Army National Guardsman, Lieutenant Jamie Williams. Lieutenant, thanks so much for calling in. Thank you so much for your service. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm originally from Kershaw, South Carolina. It's a small town about an hour north of Columbia. Grew up there, and at 18 came to Columbia. I've been here ever since. Came here for USC, and actually my first job after college was working for USC for a few years. I guess I always knew that I would serve in the military. I just didn't know when. 2015, I was exploring the idea of how do I climb the USC ladder, and it was pretty obvious that I needed a graduate degree, and I wanted to do something that was not my undergraduate background. I wanted to do something that would really market myself. So I wanted to get into business, but the Darling Moore School of Business is like the elite business school, and they looked at me and they said, it's a resume-based program.
Yeah.
You don't have enough experience. Just thought, well, what could I do to gain some experience without having to spend tens of thousands of dollars to go back to school to be trained for it? And a friend of mine just said, hey, I just joined the National Guard. Maybe you should look into it. And then it seemed like 45 days later, I was shipping off to basic training. One of the best decisions I've ever made.
Lieutenant, earlier you told me that you used to work at the University of South Carolina. How did you get into the education field?
Just by happenstance. The economy was not what it was doing today. It was a little bit more of an uncertain time. I needed a job. I needed to put my degree to work. It was a good start because, working at USC and actually not being a student, you're kind of on the backside of the curtain. And you see what it takes to run an institution that size. And specifically, I was in the admissions office. So continually, every year, we were bringing in the biggest and brightest freshman class in USC history. I enjoyed it, but in many ways, it felt like I had never left college. And so I just really wanted to pursue my passions, and that was working with our family business and selling residential real estate. And I came on board, and my family said, we'll let you work with us, but, we have to treat you like every one of the other employees, and that is sink or swim.
Right.
And so after I'd come back from basic training, I felt like I could climb any mountain. I was like, God, if I can do that, I can do anything. And so the real benefit is, and one of the main reasons why I stay in is the security of having TRICARE, because, we've been talking about health insurance and health care for years now, and there's a lot of people that are not as fortunate as I am, that I can work for myself and be my own boss, but still have a lot of the security, the safety net that a lot of people don't have.
Lieutenant, you help run your family's business, W Realty. Tell us a little bit about the business and what you guys provide.
W Realty has been around. We've been working in the business for many, many years, but it came into existence in 2008. Probably the worst time. Out of like 435, I think is the number, 430-something brokerages in the greater Columbia area. The last time I looked, we were number 32. So we're top 10%, and we're driving to keep that number growing. And one of the things that, I have done on the military aspect of it is we wanted to promote financial literacy. Mostly in this area are soldiers and airmen with McIntyre Joint Base, Fort Jackson, and Shaw. What we had a big campaign to do was to tell service members, hey, you get paid well, and you also, because you're not in your hometown, you're getting a housing allowance. Please, 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 I know you're not going to be here long. Use that housing allowance to build some equity, and when you PCS, you can either sell or rent that to another service member, and, just put an asset on your net sheet that is building you some wealth. And so we've had a lot of success with that. Surprisingly, at Shaw Air Force Base, I think the airmen there, their tours are a little longer than Fort Jackson. It's more of a transient base, but more airmen purchase homes with us, and that's what we've been really working on in the last few years.
If you want to know more about this Columbia-based business, you can go online to wrealtysc.com. Lieutenant, through your family business, W Realty of South Carolina, you're working with local military men and women, trying to help them buy property and houses, sometimes multiple houses, to help build equity, renting out properties, and so on. Tell me more about this process, and are these airmen and soldiers doing well in their financial goals?
Yeah, a lot of folks are, and unfortunately, it's more the airmen than the soldiers. I'm Army, so I'm partial to my soldiers, but more airmen tend to do it, and I think it's because they just are stationed at Shaw a little bit longer. See, a lot of people are in a position where they can't swing two mortgages. So they say, well, why would I come to Columbia and buy a house, and when I leave, I don't have the purchasing power to purchase the new house, so why would I rent something? And I tell them, it's like, don't spend the money on the nice foreign car. Even if you're not living in this house, it's an asset, it's appreciating, and you're building equity. And when you go to sell it, you should be able to make some money if you kept up with the property. We've been able to mentor a lot of young service members, not just in the housing segment of it, but to also say, these are smart financial moves and these are not. So just trying to avoid some of those pitfalls that a lot of young soldiers make, because a lot of young service members are probably out of the house for the first time. They're not used to having steady, good paycheck coming in, and they're a little more frivolous with their money.
Lieutenant, you started your Army career enlisted. You went off to basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and then you transitioned over to an officer program.
Yes, I enlisted in January of 15, and shipped shortly thereafter. It's funny that I'm a logistics officer. I always joke and say the Army has a logistics problem because I live 6 miles from Fort Jackson, but I did basic training at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. They had to put me on a plane to get me there.
That's funny.
So I went out to Fort Sill. I was signal enlisted. I was enlisted for about 2 years total, but 6 months of that time was at a unit signal company in Camden. And then I went to PMA, Palmetto Military Academy, which is the second oldest OCS program in the country. I met a lot of great men and women that are graduates. I think it makes the best officers. From start to finish, it's the reserve OCS, so it is 1 weekend a month and then two-week periods. But it was 18 months that we were in OCS. And to say it was a challenge is an understatement, but I can definitely tell the quality of officer that comes out of there. You know, when you come out as a young platoon leader, you're going to be lost. You're going to be just overwhelmed at the amount of duties and the stuff that you don't know. But I really think that I'm in a much better position having gone through that particular program.
Lieutenant, you went to both basic training for enlisted soldiers and officer candidate school for officers in the United States Army. Tell us a little bit about the differences and the similarities in those both very strenuous and tough schools.
A lot of officers don't go the route that I did, whether they commission through their college or they go through West Point. So they have their own way of how they're trained, and a lot of respect for that. But I really think that every soldier, what comes down to it, is a rifleman and needs to understand basic training. I loved it. I mean, I hated it while I was there, don't get me wrong. But as soon as I was done, I thought, well, if I could do that, anybody can do it. So that's the number one thing I get from people who are thinking about doing it. They don't think they can take the intensity. And I say, embrace the suck and it'll be over before you know it.
Yeah, that's right.
OCS, on the flip side, is, you want to lead soldiers. So it's incredible how much they try to not weed candidates out, but making sure you're up to the task to leading those soldiers, because you're responsible for that soldier and that soldier's family.
Right.
Because with rank does not come power and privilege, it's responsibility.
Lieutenant, thanks so much for calling in. Thanks so much for your service. You've got a lot on your plate. You help run the family business W Realty of South Carolina right here in Columbia. You're a lieutenant in the United States Army. Where do you see your career going, and what are your goals for your career?
Well, I definitely think, the batteries in my crystal ball are dead, but I'm pretty sure I'll get at least a 20. It would be cool to be a general officer, but, I would settle for a colonel. If I'm going to stay in, I definitely want to rise to the ranks. Even though I'm a reservist, I put my uniform on more often than most. Up until recently, I was on an active status for almost 2 years. So it was challenging running a business and committing at least 40 hours a week to the Army. But I look at our previous adjutant general who run a company much larger than mine and was the commanding officer of the South Carolina Guards. So I looked at him to say, if he can do it, then I certainly can do it.
Lieutenant, you're very passionate and very proud of your service in the United States Army. You're also very well aware that there are some serious benefits to service. If you had some advice to give to somebody that was listening right now and thinking about maybe joining the service, what would you say?
I went in at 27 years old. I was a little bit older than most of the young recruits at basic training, but I just really didn't know where I was going. It was one of the best decisions I ever made. So I would tell men and women who are even thinking about it, just do it. You would be amazed at how many doors it will open up for you. And then if it's not what you thought it would be, that first enlistment comes and goes. We're a volunteer force. Do it. If it's not for you, then you'll have learned something. You'll have opened up so many opportunities, whether that is now VA opportunities, educational benefits. It's totally worth it. Totally worth it. And it doesn't matter which component. I mean, I'm certainly partial to the Army, active or reserve. Wonderful to serve your country in that way.
A one enlistment guy myself, I will agree with that statement 100%.
Thanks for joining us in our Soldier Salute, presented by Little Pig's Barbecue, serving Columbia since 1963 with that bodacious buffet. And Palmetto State Armory, American made for life. And Franklin Equipment, rent, buy, rely. And Atkins Law Firm Workers' Comp Attorneys, who you hire matters.